I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, cold wind brushing against the back of my neck. My hands clutched the folded paper someone had left on a flat stone near the tree line. The ink had bled a little from the early dew. The handwriting was jagged, but clear enough that every line scraped across my chest like claws. Let's see if she can survive a little wilderness adventure. Below it, Lila's star-shaped bracelet shimmered in the grass. She knew. They all knew. They left me. If you've ever had to choose between your dignity and your family, leave a comment, like this story, share it, and follow the channel so you won't miss what comes next. I'm Noelle, 32, a lab tech at a public high school in Flagstaff, Arizona. The only child from my mother's previous marriage. I used to think that if I stayed quiet long enough, played it safe, maybe they'd learn to love me. But when the SUV disappeared beyond the pine trees and left me alone in the Oregon wilderness, something solidified in my gut. Some people will never love you, no matter how much you bend. 4 days ago, 12 of us crammed into 2 vans for our annual summer trip. They called it family tradition. I called it 3 days of calculated erasure. I bought the groceries. I packed the bags. I organized the gear. And I still ended up stuck in the back seat beside a broken speaker and someone's gym sock-scented duffel. "Smile a little, Nellie," Lila called out from the front, casually live-streaming. "It's family time. It's supposed to be fun." I pressed my lips shut. Any reply would become a punchline on her feed. Last year she posted a reel titled, "When You Raise the Stepkid and the Maid in One." It got over 13,000 likes. I wasn't remarkable, just the quiet one carrying plates, washing dishes, vanishing quietly. When they shared childhood stories, I stayed silent. I wasn't part of those memories. I came after Mom married Curtis, who owns a string of small gyms across the Southwest. It had been 3 years since I moved back home, after being laid off from my research job. I said it was temporary. They acted like it was permanent. I became the babysitter, the housekeeper, the fixer, especially for Lila, my half-sister, who was busy curating her identity as a minimalist lifestyle influencer. This year's trip was Curtis's idea. "Nature heals fractured souls," he said, carving grilled chicken like he was mediating a contract. I nodded. No one asked if I wanted to go. The first 3 days were copy-paste from every other trip. Lila monopolized the front seat for filming. Curtis drove like a man escaping a collapsing building. Mom Camille sat beside him, smiling, never once meeting my eyes. On the 3rd night, after camp stove chili, while I scrubbed pans, Curtis told me to gather firewood. "There's a patch of pine 15 minutes out." "Think you can handle that?" I glanced at Mom. She looked away. "Go on, Noelle," she said, her voice flat as rinse water. "Everyone's tired." So I grabbed the flashlight and went, no protest. No one offered to come, no concern. Just Curtis muttering, "Let's see if she can at least manage that." The trail was pure black. I remember the sticks snapping underfoot, flashlight flickering, the way the air felt like it was breathing wrong. The forest watched. When I got back, everything was gone. No fire, no tents, no gear, no backpacks. Just a smooth patch of earth and faint tire marks curving toward the road. Then I saw it, the note on the rock, next to Lila's bracelet. Not dropped, placed. I dropped to the ground, arms still full of wood. The sun hadn't even finished setting, but the cold was already climbing my spine. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, remembering 7th grade. Locked out of the house because I forgot to fold my blanket. Denied a spot on the art team because Mom didn't feel like signing the form. Lila tearing my sketchbook in half on video, calling it a lesson in dreaming small. I stayed there until full dark. The flashlight dimmed. My jaw ached from shivering. I curled into myself, knees to chest, face tucked into my sleeve. "Not going back," I whispered. Only the trees heard. I'm not someone you throw away for sport. But I didn't know that was just the beginning. I woke up while the sky was still pale with mist. The earth beneath me felt damp and hard against my back. My jacket was sticky with sap. My hair was tangled, and my sleeves still held the faint scent of smoke. A quiet reminder I had truly been left behind. No vehicles, no voices, just the cry of a distant bird, and the wind threading through the branches like it had a secret to share. I stood, dizzy from hunger. My ankle flared in pain with the first step, but I didn't stop. There was no reason to stay. No one comes back for what they abandoned on purpose. The path curved downward, weaving through firs and rough stone. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to go somewhere else. By midday, I reached a cracked ribbon of asphalt cutting through the woods. No signs, no names, just empty road. I waited almost 2 hours before a weathered pickup slowed beside me. "Name's Reggie," the man said. "Silver buzz cut. Striped shirt, worn to softness." "You okay?" I nodded, then shook my head. My throat burned. "I need the closest town." Reggie didn't push. Just opened the door, tuned the radio to low country, and drove like I was any other hitchhiker. I was grateful for the silence. The first town had a gas station, a bakery, and a post office that looked like a closet. I used the landline, but didn't call Camille or Curtis. There was nothing they could say that would fix any of this. Instead, I called someone I hadn't let myself think about in over a decade. Aubrey. I still remember her breath catching when she answered. My voice barely worked. "I'm near Veneta, in Oregon." "Wait there," she said. "You don't belong to them anymore." Aubrey lived in a cedar cabin outside Bend, maybe 20 minutes from town. She pulled up in her old Jeep, engine knocking like it shared my nerves. The cabin had a sloped roof, a window that sighed when the breeze came in. It wasn't glamorous, but no one looked at me like I was extra weight. She didn't ask for explanations. Just gave me a wool blanket, a steaming mug, and said, "If the cats snore, push 'em. They'll get over it." I slept 2 days straight. When I woke, everything hurt. My bones, my lips, my eyes. But the silence wasn't sharp anymore. It felt like air, not a void. No Lila laughing behind her phone. No Curtis barking orders. No Camille avoiding eye contact. Just birdsong, the rush of water, and the smell of something baking in the oven. The next morning, Aubrey left a note on the table. It listed part-time job openings, a watch shop, a co-op, a wood shop. No spas, she'd scribbled at the bottom, but work beats sulking. I picked the organic grocery on the edge of town. The pay was low. The morning started before sunup, but no one rolled their eyes when I said something. Carmen, the store manager, smiled with her whole face. "Careful hands, Noelle," she said once, watching me line up jars of wildflower honey. I smiled back. That's where I met Daniel. He came in to fix the broken delivery van. Barely spoke. Always wore a cap pulled low, amber eyes catching the light whenever we crossed paths. Every morning, he'd nod. "Morning, Noelle." Not "sweetheart." Not "hey," just my name. Like it mattered. At first I thought it was just manners. Then, one early shift, he left a thermos on the counter. "Coffee," he said, eyes skimming past mine. "You looked tired yesterday." I took it. My hands trembled just a little. "It's nothing. Someone once brought me coffee when I needed it. Now it's my turn." It wasn't a come-on. It was kindness. I found myself gripping that thermos tighter than I meant to, like it was more than coffee, like it was proof I hadn't been entirely erased. That night, I pulled out my old sketchbook. The first page still held a graphite smudge, the start of a drawing. A man holding a little girl. My dad. I didn't remember his face clearly, but that hand resting on my shoulder in the sketch. I'd never forgotten how that felt. Steady, gentle, real. I sat by the cabin window and let the moonlight crawl across the floor. Pen in hand, I started drawing again. This time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to remember what mattered. I didn't know what life here would become, but I wasn't pretending anymore. That was the moment everything started to shift. And then, on a rainy afternoon, I found the secret Aubrey had kept from me I found the box while helping Aubrey search the attic for Christmas lights. She'd just called up from the kitchen, grumbling that last year's string had been chewed by mice again, and I wanted to do more than just dry the dishes and go to bed early. The attic had a slanted ceiling, warped beams, and dust thick enough to taste. I pushed past a stack of boxes, ducked under a broken chair leg, and spotted it. A plain cardboard box sealed with worn silver duct tape. Across the top, in black marker, L. Harper. Return to sender. I didn't open it right away. Just crouched beside it, brushing away the dust with my sleeve. My throat tightened before I even understood why. The handwriting. I knew it. Harper. My father's last name. Landon Harper. I carried the box down in silence. Aubrey saw it as she poured water into the kettle. Her eyes didn't widen. Her face didn't shift. She simply said, "So, you found it?" Like she'd been waiting for me to. Inside were over 30 letters, tied together with thin twine. The envelopes were yellowed, some ink smudged. Each one addressed to me, Noelle Harper. All from someone named June Harper. It took me 3 tries to recognize the name. My grandmother, my dad's mother, the woman Mom always called unstable, dramatic, unsafe to be around. I opened them slowly. Some were short notes reminding me to eat breakfast. Others had pressed flowers or little doodles. Some were poems, quiet ones that never said, "I miss you," but still said exactly that. One letter near the bottom I couldn't let go of. Dated November, the year I turned 9, the year my dad died. My dear one, if my son is no longer there to protect you, then I will. Landon set aside a small fund for you. Not much, but enough to chase what you love. Don't let anyone tell you your dreams are indulgent. If you're reading this, I hope you found it before your mother spent it. Love, Grandma June. I sat there for a long time, hollow, like someone had dug up the past and handed me the bones. She mailed them all, Aubrey said, watching me. To the house. Everyone came back, marked, "Return to sender." She called. She wrote. In the end, she sent them to me. I couldn't throw them out. I didn't ask why Aubrey never gave them to me. Maybe she'd asked herself that question for years. All I knew was, for the first time in forever, I could feel a part of my story. One that had been buried, starting to take shape. That night, I brought my sketchbook to the table, flipped near the back, and began sketching my father's face. I didn't remember all the details, but I remembered the eyes. Deep brown, a little tired, and the half-smile that always looked like it was about to laugh. I drew him sitting on a wooden stool, brush in hand, in front of a blank canvas. The painting within the painting hadn't been started. I imagined it was meant to be of me. Not yet drawn, not yet forgotten. Before bed, I tucked the drawing under my pillow. A quiet promise. I'll keep walking the road you didn't get to finish. The next morning, there was a piece of paper on the kitchen table plain, printed, no flourish. Aubrey had left it before heading into town. A list of 10 regional nonprofits that help adults recover financial assets from guardianship abuse. I didn't ask where she found it. I just looked at her neat underlines, her circled notes in the margins. She hadn't written a single encouraging word. But at the bottom, in blue ink, she'd scribbled, "Start by believing you deserve to." I wasn't sure I did, but I knew I had to try. I hadn't even sent anything out yet when the pass showed up first. It was a June night, close to midnight. I was halfway through making toast when my phone rang. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over decline, but brushed accept instead. "Noelle," a man's voice said, low, tense. "This is Caleb Reeves." The name swirled, faint and disjointed from memory. "I'm Curtis's son," he added, "from his first marriage." I froze. "I know what he did to you," he continued, voice slower now, like he knew I was climbing through fog. "I've got a story, too." I didn't speak. "He kicked me out at 17, said I stole from him." I didn't, but no one cared. Still, I said nothing. You need to know what he did with your trust fund. Caleb pressed. I have proof, if you want to see it. I set the phone down on the table and tapped record. Why now? I asked, my voice flat. I saw your name, he said, in the article about that grocery store. There was a photo. I recognized you. And you think you belong in this story? No, he said quietly. I think this might belong in mine too. He didn't ask to meet. I didn't make promises. The call ended. 2 days later, a package arrived. No return address I recognized. It came from Idaho. The sender was someone named Monica Adams, maybe Curtis's ex-wife, maybe someone Caleb trusted. Inside was a thick manila folder filled with documents, typed, organized. Some pages signed, bank records, wire transfers, financial forms under the title Harper Family Fund, signatures from both Curtis and Camille. They had legally drained the fund when I was 16. Filed it under minor financial management. They never expected me to find out, or they assumed if I did, I'd do nothing. That afternoon, I sat across from Aubrey at the table. She read every page carefully, mouth pressed tight. At the final document, she slid the folder back toward me. What do you want to do? She asked. I didn't know. My brain was static, but my chest felt dense. Like all those pages were weights. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. The only thing I felt clearly was this. I had been robbed. Not just of money, but of time, of voice, of the future I should have shaped for myself. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the kitchen light casting gold across the floor. In front of me was a sketch of my father, the one where his brush hovered above a blank canvas. I stared at the hands his, and then mine, and wondered if I'd have turned out different if he'd lived. Maybe. But he was gone, and I was still here. The next morning, I splashed my face with cold water, made a checklist, backup documents, scanned every form. No plans for lawsuits, just preparation. This time, I would write the story. I wouldn't let anyone else pick the ending. Later that day, Daniel found me sitting by the shop's printer. He didn't say much, just placed a brown paper bag beside me. Inside, coffee and a grilled chicken sandwich. If you need help, he said, still watching the window, say so. If not, I'll just sit for a while. I nodded. That was enough. After he left, I opened my laptop, created a new folder. Harper, the truth. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing. I wasn't backing down. Then an email came, not from Caleb, not from Aubrey, not from someone I never expected to hear from again. Subject, we need help. It was from Camille. The email was short, no greeting, no warmth. Just a neat, sterile paragraph like she was reading from a script she didn't care to write herself. Lila is in trouble. She's being sued for false advertising on TikTok. Curtis, too. He lost most of his investments in a crypto project. Our family needs help. After all, we're still blood. I stared at the screen. Not a flicker of emotion. Just a strange stillness, like standing in snowfall, already frozen, unable to feel the cold. I didn't reply. I closed the browser and stepped outside. The evening wind tangled my hair. It felt sharp but real. And that was more than I'd felt in years with them. I wasn't the daughter they needed. I was just a credit card they hoped hadn't expired. That night, I opened the old box of letters from Grandma June. There was one more I hadn't noticed, folded thin at the very bottom. Purple ink, wobbly handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you still have a path back to what's yours. Landon left you a separate fund, beyond your mother's reach. But to find it, you'll need to know who to ask. Margot Eisen, email address, phone number. She had underlined the name. I didn't wait. The next morning, I gave the number a try. I didn't expect much. Maybe a voicemail, maybe nothing. After several rings and a brief fax screech, a woman answered. Clear, older, firm. This is Margot. I swallowed. My name is Noelle Harper. My father was Landon Harper. Silence. Then, I thought you were unreachable, she said slowly. I gave her the shortest possible version of the truth. Robin, the letters, the abandonment, The trust fund theft? No drama, just facts. She paused before responding. There is a custodial account under your name at Valley Trust, established when you were 9. It's not a large amount, but it's untouched. My breath caught on that word. Untouched. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived. Confirmation papers. The account held just under $30,000. Not life-changing, but real. Unstolen. Mine. I printed everything. Labeled the folder, tucked it into the drawer by my bed. Not to spend yet, just to know it was there. A key I could carry. That night, I was in the little studio out back, hands streaked with charcoal, when Daniel knocked on the door. He was holding a rolled-up sheet of paper. "What's that?" I asked. "Sketch plans," he said. "For renovating the shed." I figured, if you're really going to draw, you deserve a west-facing window and decent lighting. I held the draft with both hands. It was still warm from the car. "You don't need to change anything," I whispered. He shrugged. "Not everyone needs much to start. Just a space to exist." I nodded. A space to exist. It sounded small, but it had taken me 32 years to earn that. That night, I lay on the cot near the window, moonlight slipping through a white curtain. I didn't think about Lila, or Curtis, or Camille. I thought about the man in my drawing, my father, and I imagined him sitting beside me, smiling, watching me sign my name at the bottom of a new sketch. Almost 20 years to write it without trembling, and I thought that was the end. But then, just as I exhaled, someone from the past knocked on my door. I was wiping down the studio table when I heard the car pull up outside the gate. It wasn't Daniel. His engine had a distinct clunky rhythm like it limped along with pride. This one was quieter, too smooth, precise. I stepped out into the golden light of the late afternoon. The road shimmered with dust. A silver sedan parked just beyond the fence. The woman who stepped out made my chest tighten, my hand clench around the cleaning rack. Lila. Her wavy hair was perfectly styled. Designer sunglasses pushed to the top of her head. A cream blazer buttoned once, and a skirt short enough to show off perfectly tanned knees. She walked like the road still belonged to her. "Noelle?" she said, smiling, like we were meeting at a coffee shop. Like she hadn't left me in the woods. Like she hadn't emailed me weeks ago asking for help. I didn't move from the porch. "How did you find me?" "The internet," she said with a shrug. "A few local articles, a mention from someone in town. Wasn't hard. What do you want?" She hesitated for the first time, her eyes flicking toward the studio behind me. "It's not something I could really explain in an email. You've got 1 minute." She pressed her lips together. She wasn't used to time limits. "Curtis is under investigation. Taxes, investment fraud, misuse of trust assets," she said quickly. "And Mom?" "She's drinking more, saying strange things." "And you?" I asked. "You're being sued for crypto fraud." She flinched. "I didn't take anyone's money. I just promoted it. That was my job. A job that left 18 people broke. 3 of them were high school students." Lila looked away. Her blazer caught in the wind. She tucked it down, hands trembling slightly. "I messed up," she whispered. "But I didn't mean harm. Things just spiraled." I stepped off the porch and stood in front of her. "We need you to sign something," she said. "Just a paper, saying you received your inheritance, that you don't contest anything. If you sign, the case gets easier for everyone." I laughed, short and dry. "You want me to say I was treated fairly, for Mom's sake?" "She can't handle much more," Lila murmured. I clenched my fingers. Cold crept into my hands like melting snow. "What did she say the night I was left in the woods? Do you remember?" Silence. 1 call, 1 apology. That's all it would have taken. Still silence. "Leave my land, Lila." She swallowed. "I know I'm not a good person, but I didn't think you'd be this cold." "It's not cold," I said. "It's clarity. If you've ever been blamed just for telling the truth, leave a comment. If you've ever been silenced because no one believed you, Share this story. Someone needs to hear it. When the sedan pulled away, kicking up a veil of soft dust, I stayed still for a moment, then turned and walked back into the studio. Daniel was across the room, wiping grease from his hands. He didn't ask what happened. "You okay?" he said simply. I nodded. "It's fine if you don't want to talk," he added, setting down the rag. "But I'm here." I stepped closer and leaned gently on the drawing table, looking out the window where sunlight was slipping off the edge of the wooden frame. "Part of me still wants to forgive," I whispered. "But the rest doesn't want to be someone people think they can bend anymore." Daniel nodded. "Then you're learning to hold a boundary," he said. "Not to be cold." That night, I sat alone at the table in the studio. I pulled out the envelope with the paper Lila had wanted me to sign. I laid it in front of me, pen in hand. Reflex told me to just sign and be done, but my hand paused. And then slowly, I tore the paper in half. What I didn't expect was that just a few days later, I'd be sitting across from them, not on my land, not in my space, but in a place they chose. A diner in Boise, 3 hours from Bend, wedged between an old gas station and a bakery that had changed names at least 3 times. No one in town cared who you were meeting. The waitress kept the coffee topped off without asking questions. Aubrey came with me. She sat 2 tables away, pretending to read an old paperback, not to chaperone, just so I wouldn't have to make the drive back alone. Curtis was already there when I walked in. White shirt, freshly ironed, arms folded, face like a marble statue. Camille stood too quickly, hugging me like there were cameras pointed at us. I didn't lift my arms. Leela sat at the end of the booth, tapping her nails against a water glass. She looked tired. Not physically, but soul-tired. Like someone still trying to pretend things were salvageable. Curtis spoke first. "We don't have much time." "Of course, straight to business, like always." "Lila needs to clear her record," he said. "You could help with that. Just a statement, nothing major." I pulled out the chair across from him, dropped my document bag on the seat beside me, and rested my hand on the strap. Camille lowered her eyes. "I know you're angry, Noelle, but you're the only one who can turn this around." "I'm not angry," I said. "I remember." Lila rolled her eyes, trying to sound composed. "It's just old stuff, Noelle. Everyone's messed up before." "It's not old stuff when you leave someone alone in the forest and lavestream it," I replied, voice calm and steady. "No one is obligated to be kind to people who treated them like props." Curtis leaned in. "I get that you're hurt, but this affects the whole family now." I studied his face, not blinking. "You once called me a burden," I said. "You signed off on draining a fund meant for me, and now you're asking me to help you out of the mess you created." Silence. "Lila chose to become the face of a scam," I continued. "I don't owe her silence. I don't owe her my dignity." My words weren't loud, but they emptied the booth like a sound vacuum. Curtis narrowed his eyes. "So this is your move? Revenge?" "No," I said. "This is a boundary." And then, just as the air turned stiff again, the back door of the diner creaked open. A woman's voice rang out. "It's not revenge, it's truth." We all turned. Kira, a girl I went to high school with, walked in holding a folder of documents. She nodded at me, then looked straight at Curtis. "Leela isn't innocent," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "She signed the promotional materials for that cryptocurrency alongside Curtis, and he promised he'd clean it up if it fell apart." Lila's mouth dropped. "Where did you get that?" "An old client of Curtis's," Kira replied. "One he threatened if they spoke out. That client just filed an independent lawsuit." Camille sank into the booth like her spine had gone soft. Lila went pale, staring through me. Curtis didn't move, but I saw his knuckles whiten around the glass in front of him. I opened my bag and slid a small envelope onto the table. "A copy of the bus receipt," I said. 5 years ago, from the forest to Ogden, Utah, one way, $18.75. I stood. "That's what you left me with." Outside, the rain had started, soft, cold, clean. Aubrey had already stepped out. She stood by the car with her coat in hand. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, not smiling, not flinching. "You look like someone who just untied a giant knot," she said. The drive back to Bend was silent. She didn't ask what I was thinking. She knew I didn't need to say it out loud. When we got home, I opened the studio, turned on the lamp, and sat at the table where the unfinished sketch of my father still waited. My hands didn't shake this time. I picked up the pencil and began finishing what was missing. 3 days after that meeting in Boise, my phone rang again. The number had a Midwest area code I didn't recognize. I was reorganizing my paint palette in the studio when I almost let the call go to voicemail. But something made me answer. "Noelle Harper?" a woman's voice asked. Clear, calm, steady. "Yes." "This is Margot Eisen. I used to work with your father." I put my brush down slowly. "I remember your name," I said. "You might want to come to Minneapolis," she continued. "I have some documents Landon left for you. He never got the chance to transfer them formally, but he wanted you to have them." My hand gripped the table's edge. "What kind of documents?" "We should meet." I flew to Minneapolis on a Friday. The spring air had teeth, a cold breeze lingering despite the date on the calendar. Aubrey lent me an old leather satchel to carry the files. Daniel walked me to the car that morning, didn't say much, just slipped a granola bar and a folded note into my bag. "You can come back anytime." Margot's office was in a historic building near the old train station. The elevator groaned with memory. She stood when I entered, tall, silver-haired, a plum cardigan with worn cuffs. She studied me like a photograph. "You look like him," she said gently, motioning for me to sit. She handed me a small wooden box, light but solid. Inside were legal documents, a short handwritten letter, and a thick envelope full of photos. I opened the letter first. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. But I still want you to have control over what I tried to preserve. The house by Lake Superior. Where you painted your first picture is in your name. Hidden through an independent trust. Your mother doesn't know. Curtis doesn't either. Aubrey may suspect. I asked her to keep it quiet until you were strong enough to return." I didn't cry. There was no collapse. Just a deep, quiet recognition. This was trust without demand, without proof. Margot spoke softly. "The house isn't big, but it's standing. Property taxes are covered through this year. You can go whenever you're ready." I flipped through the photos. A yard framed by trees, a weathered white fence, the side wall of the house covered in green moss. "Have you been back?" Margot asked. I shook my head. "I remember painting there," I said. "Not much else," she smiled. "With just the colors and the light, it'll come back." When I returned to Bend, I brought a printed Google map with a red circle around Greystone Lake House. I told Aubrey everything. She didn't act surprised. She just nodded and said, "Your dad always had a plan." The following week, I sorted documents and moved a portion of the fund toward repair costs. Daniel offered to help without saying whether it was for the project or for me. Probably both. One evening, while reviewing the roof repair budget, I received another email. No reply address, just a name. Camille Lancaster? Subject, no excuses, just a request. The body was short. Your sister, no matter what she's done, didn't deserve to be abandoned. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But if you still feel anything for family, please come. I'm sick, not much time left. I don't need money. I just want to see my daughter one more time. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was conflicted, but because the words sounded like something I used to beg to hear. Now they rang hollow. I didn't respond. I shut the laptop and stepped outside. The night was clear. Wind soft against my face. I thought of Lila, who hadn't reached out since Boise. I thought of Curtis, who likely wasn't worried about anything but himself. And I thought of my father, the man who left me a house by the lake so I could have a place where no one asked, "What have you done to earn your spot here?" And then, early one morning, I got into my car alone and began the drive northeast. Back to where I once had paint on my hands and sun in my hair. Back to something unnamed, something waiting. The road to Greystone Lake was narrower than I remembered, winding, overgrown in places. Pines stood thick on both sides, letting sunlight slip through in long golden slants. I drove slowly, not just because I was cautious, but because something in my chest felt tender. Not excitement, not fear, just readiness. The house appeared around a bend, silent and still, like it had been waiting since the moment I vanished from my own life. Gray shingles weathered by time, a slanted porch, windows dulled by dust. But it was whole. I parked, stepped out, and breathed in the cold, clean air. It smelled like pine, earth, and forgotten memories. I slid the key into the old lock. The door opened with a soft creak. Inside it smelled of paint and dry wood. On the far wall, still faint but there, was the chalk fox I had drawn when I was 8, orange and wild. Dad had called it a flame that could run. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, hand resting on the chipped wooden boards. No miracles, no flashbacks, just the solid, quiet feeling of not being pushed out, not being temporary, not being someone else's afterthought. 3 weeks later, I moved in for good. Every morning, I woke early, opened the lake-facing window, brewed coffee, sat at the small porch table, and sketched whatever felt real that day, swaying grasses, reflections on water, a face from memory. I called them my unfinished parts. Aubrey came by that first weekend. She brought apple pie and a small potted mint plant. "Let this place breathe with you," she said, then walked through the rooms, touching walls and windows like she was checking if the space was wide enough for peace. 2 weeks later, Daniel showed up on the porch with a toolbox and a fresh can of paint. "I'm not good with words," he said, "but these door handles are a crime." I nodded. That was enough. We fixed the porch roof, changed the locks, hung a new easel stand. Some afternoons we sat together in silence, just listening to the lake touch the shore. Then one summer afternoon, a small package arrived. No return address. The handwriting on the brown paper was unmistakable. To Noelle Harper, Greystone Lake House. Inside was something I hadn't seen in over 15 years. My old sketchbook. The one I thought Lila had destroyed. The cover was taped, the pages laminated to protect them from moisture. On page 32 was my unfinished sketch of Dad. The pencil lines were faint, but untouched. Tucked inside was a note. No apology is enough. But maybe this should go back to the one who made it. No signature. I didn't need one. I brought it into the bedroom and placed it on the bookshelf. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams, no waking to echoes. The next month, I launched the Harper Boundaries Fund, a small grant program for girls who had experienced financial and emotional abuse in their families. We didn't call them victims. We called them in transition. The launch event was held at the local town hall. 30 people came. Some strangers, some students. I wore a moss green linen dress and read from a short page. We didn't build this fund to accuse, but to clear a path. Not to run, but to choose direction. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is redraw the map. An older woman in the front row nodded softly. A teenage girl beside her gripped the edge of her chair, eyes fixed on mine like she recognized her story in my voice. That night, back at the lake house, I hung the finished portrait of my dad in the studio. In the drawing, his brush no longer hovered above a blank canvas. It rested gently on my shoulder. 3 days later, a text arrived from a number I hadn't saved, but felt like a lightning strike through my body. Eleanor is gone. No details. No funeral invitation. No final words. Just those 3 words. A sharp ending to a story I'd spent years untangling. I sat on the porch step, holding the phone. Robin came outside. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just handed me a cup of mint tea, her hand resting on my back solid grounding. "You going?" she asked. I looked at the lake, water sparkling under the summer sun. "I don't know," I said softly. Not because I'm angry, just not sure who I'd be there. I didn't go. Instead, I wrote a letter and sent it by email. In it, I didn't blame, I didn't justify, I just shared. About Greystone, about finishing Dad's portrait. About the fund for girls like me. And at the end, I wrote, "Thank you for giving me life. I hold no anger, but I need peace more than an apology." There was no response, no questions. And I was okay with that. Because for the first time, I felt free. One afternoon in June, I hosted a painting class in the yard. A few girls came. Some had applied to the fund. Others were friends of friends. We sat under a big oak tree and painted to quiet jazz. Daniel built a simple frame to hang sketches. One girl, maybe 8 years old, pointed at the portrait of my dad. "Who's that?" she asked. "He's the one who taught me to see what others miss," I said. She nodded, then turned back to paint a tree with long flowing hair. That night we lit a small campfire. People came by, some with guitars, some with marshmallows. We didn't tell deep stories, just small pieces. Bad soup, overdue oil changes, a misdelivered love letter. The fire crackled, laughter floated, and for the first time, I looked up at the stars and felt something inside me loosen. Not healed, but no longer aching. A week later, a manila envelope arrived. It was the court's final report. Curtis guilty of fraud, asset misuse. Barred from managing funds related to minors for 10 years. I didn't celebrate. I printed the pages, slid them into a folder, and tucked it into the drawer beneath my drawing table. The drawer where I kept things that once broke me, but now made the foundation for everything I was building. Later that evening, Daniel handed me a small wooden box. "Delivered today," he said. No sender. Inside was a folded paper. Thin, familiar handwriting. "You're not the leftover. You just don't fit where they tried to place you, but you were always part. No name, no apology, just truth." I folded the paper gently, not to keep it as proof, but like laying a smooth stone in a riverbed, so the water can keep flowing clear. Wherever you are, whether in your car, before bed, or on a day when you just needed something to remind you who you are, thank you for listening. If Noelle's story spoke to something in you, follow the channel. The next story might be the one you didn't know you needed. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming and choosing the life no one thought you deserved, but you built anyway. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "I'm still here."